If you are brave enough to bring your spirit, your soul into business, you are going to make a lot of money and you're going to change the world for the better. The thing is, it's extremely difficult to do that. It's the reason that we have this giant split where there's the business world where what matters is making money. What matters is getting eyeballs and having people see what you're doing. And then there's the spiritual world, which is this deep internal path. And, it's all about connection and oneness and unity. And it's like oil and water right now. These two things do not mix. But the thing is that there is no difference. This barrier that divides the two is a false barrier. It's an illusion that we have set up. And the reason that we've set it up is this spiritual part of us, it feels too vulnerable. It feels too scary. And we tell ourselves that it's not going to work, that people aren't going to be willing to hear it. And if that doesn't work, a part of you, the deepest part of you, is going to feel rejected, is going to feel hurt. And that's why starting a business is the best thing that you can do for your personal and spiritual development. So how do you show up on a sales call? How do you show up on a free call that you're hosting? Like I do a what I call a wisdom call every week. How do you show up on a client call to somebody that's paid you a ton of money? If you're showing up differently to each of those three things, so on a sales call, you're showing up, with this kind of slight, this guise of, I want to understand you. But in reality, it's this manipulation of, I want to understand you so that I can get you to buy my thing. And then you show up to a free call, not in a good energy, not having done your prep work. And by prep work, I don't mean going and learning everything about what you're going to talk about. I mean being in a good energetic state, being able to show up and bring all of you. You don't do that because it's a free call or a client call, and you show up with this need to prove your worth and to prove your value. And each of these three different ways of showing up lead to a split in yourself. And that split drains energy, because every time we have to switch roles or put on a mask, there's a part of us inside that knows that we're not being true to ourselves. And then even outside of the business, how do you show up at your house? How do you show up with your friends? I used to have a completely different version of myself in the business that I owned versus with my friends that I hung out with, because I didn't think I could show all of myself. So what I'm saying is that if your business is struggling, I'm willing to wager that it is a personal development issue, not a nuts and bolts issue in your business. Those are super easy to fix. Right? We can do some split testing. We can look at data. We can ask people that have done it before, like how do I set up a website? How do I do this funnel? How do I have this marketing thing? Nuts and bolts, 1 + 1 = 2 stuff, super simple. The hard stuff is the personal development stuff. It's the not believing that you're worth what you're charging. It's not thinking that you can deliver on the offer that you have out in the world. Like if that, even if it's subtle, even if it's the tiniest part of you, if that is there, there's no way that your business is going to be successful. So much energy goes into the controlling of how other people are perceiving you. And that comes from, it can come from a couple of places, but it can come from a lack of internal safety, right? My nervous system doesn't feel safe. So I got to make sure that somebody, I control somebody's reaction to me so that they don't get upset and it doesn't get dangerous. Or it could be an acceptance thing. It could be that you want people to like you. And so you morph into what that person needs you to be so that they like you. But then you're not going to be able to share the hard truth. You're not going to be able to share the thing that they need to grow and develop and change. And the flip side of this coin is also true. If you have a booming business, if financially you are crushing it, but inside you are lacking a sense of purpose, you're lacking a sense of meaning in your life, that could actually be a business issue, not a personal development issue. It could be that you are operating a business that doesn't align to your soul. You're operating something that you know isn't doing good in the world, that isn't a part of your dharma. So these are two sides of the exact same coin, and 80% of the time plus, the solution to the problem is in the other domain. So the solution to the business problem is in the personal domain. The solution to the relationship problem is in the business domain. And so the first step is knowing yourself. Because without that, how do you know how to show up? Right? I'm telling you that you need to show up consistently across the board. And so the question is, what identity is actually you? Which part of you is the real you? And if you've been doing this for a long time, you've probably lost contact with that. I know I did. And so we have to do the work to get back to an understanding of who we are. And I use a system for that called the Gene Keys. And that gives us an understanding of, our gifts in the world and how we can open our heart and how we're designed to interact in the marketplace. But you could also use, something like a Myers-Briggs assessment or Strength Finders. There's lots of different ways to do this. Another key piece of the puzzle is releasing all of the conditioning that you've taken on, all the nonsense that all the marketing gurus and all the business people told you, right? That you need to niche yourself down into this tiny thing, that you need to have the perfect sales funnel page. All of that nonsense goes out the window when you can just show up as yourself and be magnetic so that people can't help but want to work with you and be drawn to you. And so a big part of reconnecting to that is remembering your childhood dreams. So like for me, I wanted to be a baseball player. That was like my very earliest childhood dream. And then in a few years down the line, I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I wanted to be a doctor. But the lawyer and the doctor thing came because of society, right? They told me that is a good thing to do. That's how I'm going to be able to make money. It's a useful thing to have. And so that's when I started thinking that. But in reality, baseball player. Well, I'm past my prime. I turned 40 this year. So being a professional baseball player isn't it. But what else about a baseball player is a piece of that puzzle? And one thing that I landed on is their role models. Right? There's somebody who people look to as an example of something inspirational in their lives. And at my deepest core, I know that is the reason that I am here. And so everything in my life now is curated so that I can show up as that man in everything that I do. Once we're clear on who we are, then we can turn towards the problems that we're seeing in our personal lives or in our business. And that's the first question you got to ask is, where is the problem? And you follow that problem to the root within that particular domain. So let's say, for example, you don't have people booking sales appointments, and you figure out that people are getting to the landing page, but they're not booking the appointment. So that tells us that there's a problem somewhere on that page, as an example. Then the next question is, where might an overlapping domain, and what I'm telling you right now is that everything is overlapping. So what is another area in my life that might cause that effect? So to give you a real world example here, let's say the problem is I don't have enough money. So there's a lot of things that could cause that I don't have enough money. Maybe it's a bad message, right? You don't have the right language in what you're trying to speak. Maybe it's that you have the wrong offer. You're not talking to the right people about a problem that they have. Or maybe it's that you can't close. You don't know how to sell. So in this example, let's say that the message is resonating, and you know that because you've got tons of comments on social saying, man, this is awesome. Like, this applies to me so directly. Then let's say that you have calls booked. So people are booking and showing up for a discovery call with you. So that tells you that you have a solid offer. And yet still you're not able to close anything. And that's the reason that you're not making money. Well, in that domain, the answer to that problem is to go and take a sales training. So you go and you take an 8-week sales training course. You have all the nuts and bolts of how to close and scripts and all of that stuff. And still, there is no change on the back end of that. So then we've got to ask the real question is, why am I not able to sell when I have all these frameworks and I have a way that's working for somebody else? Because if it's working for somebody else, it can work for you. And at its root, you have some limiting belief that is coming across in your energy when you're having these sales conversations. So there's some belief that you can't deliver the value that you promise to somebody. And if that's in there, people can pick up on the subtlest things. They're going to notice. And it's coming potentially maybe from a belief, for example, I'm not enough. I'm not enough to be able to fulfill this offer. I'm not worthy of X amount of dollars to fulfill this. But you are. You are infinitely, infinitely valuable as a human. And so your real work is about coming into contact with that infinite value and remembering who and what you really are. And when you do that, you're going to start to sell like crazy. You've got to come in contact with this deep underlying stuff. To manifest your purpose, you must be you all the time. That's the only requirement. All this other stuff, forget about it. It doesn't matter. If you can show up as you, you will have this magnetic quality that people will not be able to resist. And that's why I'm saying you're going to make a boatload of money. And I also said you're going to change the world. Because when you show up as you show up in love. And when I say love here, I don't mean like, relational love. I don't mean this woo-woo thing. What I mean is like what's true, what's pure, what's real, what matters. And when that is what drives your action in the world, of course, it's going to bring more of that energy out into the world. It's going to inspire more people to do what you're doing. And when more people are inspired, when more people take action, the world is going to start to change. Not from yelling at everyone what they're doing wrong. It's just living your truth. So, if this message speaks to you, I've got a free community on Skool. I also have an opportunity to dive deep with me into these different domains of life, into the business stuff, into the personal stuff, the relationship stuff, to heal this split that we've talked about, to make a lot more money, to find a lot more peace and a lot more joy in your life. I'm going to be starting with folks in about a month in that realm. So if that interests you, I'll put that link down below. There is an application process, a filtering process. I'm careful about where my energy goes, as you should be. So if that speaks to you, I'll put that link down there too. All right, thanks for being here.